as the co-CEO of SAP, I thought, what if we could take a company that's 40 years old and turn it into a teenager again? And when I'm thinking about design thinking and my passion for this methodology, it's really about that. It's not the unique creativity of very special people who just are gifted in a different way, and you don't necessarily understand what they say and how they think, but the outcome is amazing. For me, it's about how do we get the creativity that I believe is in every single human being if you just allow them to exploit it. But how do we do that at scale? How do we do that with the 61,000 people that we had employed at the company? And how do we do that with all the partners and the ecosystem? Because most of the innovation of the future will not just come from the company, it will come from the ecosystem of innovation that you can create. Now, we found ourselves in a situation where we had three challenges. First of all, we were too slow. The average cycle between new releases of software was around 18 months. And before that was adopted at the customer, you can add another 3 years. We were also getting marginal in everything we did, which in a business that is a software, repeatable software business, not a consulting business, is the worst trap you can fall in. You build more and more stuff for fewer and fewer companies. And finally, and maybe the biggest problem of all, we found ourselves in an increasing amount of complexity because we were obsessed with the idea that the next value add for our customer is more stuff, more functionality. Look, I fit 2 fields more into the screen kind of approach. We actually looked at that from the design thinking methodology, and you look at the 3 dimensions. Is it feasible? Is it viable? And is it desirable? And no doubt, there was a big lack in general of the understanding of desirability because we thought the desirability was about convincing the CIO that this is the right software. And we realized that suddenly we live in a world where the decision point is the end user. And this will only get worse. When my son comes into business and needs to select software, he'll just use the software he wants to use, not the one that the IT department is suggesting. We created, based on that, this passion that we want to be the innovator in the business software arena, which was not exactly the brand recognition we had. We had the brand recognition of reliable and it works and stuff like that, but it was not necessarily the most innovative stuff in the industry. And then we created a strategy which was based on innovation to drive growth. The second task was really looking into our processes. There were 2 problems we had to solve. One was the how do we develop software? And then it was about what kind of software are we developing? The how was the first thing we tried to tackle, because if you have an 18-month cycle of development, it doesn't really matter how great your product is. You will always be too late. So when we looked at that, we tried to understand where do we spend our time. And it was clear that most of the time was spent in specification. And then we hand off the task to another team who was doing the coding. And then we would hand it over to another team who would do the testing. And 18 months later, we would hand it over to the customer for the first feedback. And the feedback was usually, yeah, that's not bad, but it's not really what I had in mind. And then we would do this whole thing once again to get version 2, and in average, at version 3, we would get it kind of right. In some situations, we had to go to version 7 before we got it right, and then you're definitely too late. So we took a leap of faith into a combination of lean and agile, which is what small software companies do when they innovate at high speed. It is the idea that you create smaller teams, not 1,000 people, maybe 10, maybe 12, maybe 15. The team has the necessary skills to complete what they have to do, which needs design people, quality people, coding people, people who understand customer needs. You have to bring all competencies in the same team. It has to be relatively small. And then, most importantly, you involve the customer day one, and you iterate in rapid cycles. We said 4-week cycles. Every 4 weeks, working software, you run off a prioritized backlog, so you don't try and solve everything, and you push this pile of stuff in front of you until 6 months later, you're done. This is not new. This has been going on for years in small companies. The challenge was, how do you scale that to 18,000 people? It's a complete new philosophy of management because the manager is no longer needed. That's tough to say, here I am. But he's not, or she is not. You let the team run, and you have the customer in the room. And I would say, what I see now is that this will go far beyond development at SAP. When we're in front of customers, talking about what could happen to your business is everything was real time. And we bring the design thinking into the conversation in front of the customer. The innovation that we create at customer site on how we can use this new technology to do things they never even imagined before is unbelievable.